Okay. I'm Paul Schroeder with New City Initiative. We're a nonprofit in Portland, Oregon that engages the faith community in ending the cycle of homelessness. And I'm here today with a delegation of religious leaders from throughout Portland and Multnomah County in Oregon. And we're here today to call upon the legislature to restore funding for the Emergency Housing Account, EHA, and the State Homeless Assistance Program, or SHAP. In 2007, funding for these programs at the time of the budget crisis was cut by 25%. But what we've seen, particularly in our own region in Multnomah County and Portland, is that family homelessness has increased by 17% just in the past 2 years. As faith leaders, we see this every day in our neighborhoods, in our congregations, how it affects our people, how it affects the people who come to us seeking services. We believe that the EHA and SHAP funding represents funding that is compassionate, that supports people who are in need. It's just and represents support for the basic human rights and human dignity of every person, but also that it's smart. These funds are flexible funds that can be used for eviction prevention, for deposits for folks who are moving out of shelter and into housing. They can be used for domestic violence shelters. They represent funding that can be used for early intervention. And what we know is that when early intervention is not available, the downstream interventions that are available are much more expensive and less effective. So we think that this is an investment in Oregon's future and in the future of our families. These funds also support a lot of the partnerships between the faith community and local governments, and that's why it's particularly important, we think, as the faith community that we're here today. We are bringing 613 letters from individually addressed to local representatives and senators that are from the congregants and members of the communities that we represent, and we'll be distributing them today and meeting with legislators. And I'm going to invite some of my my friends and colleagues here who are going to be speaking to this issue as well.
Thank you. I'm Matt Cato. I'm Director of the Office of Life, Justice, and Peace with the Archdiocese of Portland. Pope Francis talks about the evils of a throwaway society where people are treated as commodities. People are not commodities. They're not statistics. They're not budget expenses. They're people. They're humans. And they have basic human rights. The right to food, the right to education, and the right to shelter. And I see this in the entire Archdiocese of Portland, which stretches from the Washington to the California border, that this fundamental right is constantly being violated. In Douglas County, there are hundreds of high school students who don't have shelter. They don't have a home. In Gresham, at St. Henry Parish, which caters to the homeless, I see it all the time. We see this in Tigard at St. Anthony's with their severe weather shelter. And in Beaverton and Hillsborough, where the Catholic and non-Catholic churches have gotten together for about 6 years now with the severe weather shelter during December, January, and February. They're all partnering together. We see it in Eugene. The problem is everywhere. It's not a Portland problem. And these are human beings, again. They're not budget expenses. They are you, they are me, they're our family, they're our neighbors, our community. If not today, then possibly tomorrow, because homelessness affects all of us. Together, the government can provide hope. They can provide a place of compassion. Together, government can provide a future for our children and our neighbors and our brothers and sisters. Together, we all, including our government partners, can do better. Thank you.
I'm Dr. David Wheeler. I'm the senior pastor of the First Baptist Church in downtown Portland. Our congregation, directly and in partnership with partner ministries working out of our facility, we feed about 50,000 meals each year to our homeless and precariously housed neighbors. And one thing I've seen in particular that has struck me, defying the stereotypes of people with long-term social problems and long-term histories of bad decisions, many of the folks that we see are young adults, singly and paired with children, infants and toddlers who are living on the streets, lined up at shelters, couch surfing, and because of the precarious nature of our new economy with so many jobs that are casual, temporary, and don't give living wages and benefits, many of these young adults with children have a high mountain to climb to get into any kind of real housing. And so one particular part of this funding that we are asking for is to help with deposits to get folks off the street into safe and secure and permanent housing. And these young adults with children that we see, maybe they've made some poor choices, maybe they haven't, but they're a large component of the folks that we are feeding and interacting with, and these smart dollars can get them into permanent and secure housing, the young adults with their children.
I'm Rabbi Joseph Wolf, Havurah Shalom, Northwest Portland. I'd like to ask for a moment who these people are, and I'd like to look at another side of the story. They're members of our community, they're members of our family. They're our children who one moment we have high hopes for, and then in the next moment they might go over a cliff. In a precarious economy, we can only imagine that moment in which someone moves from passages from a sense of self-respect and respectability and composure to the moment that is chaos. I think it's important that we all consider the fact that that's a very quick passage point, and we're all aware that there are people in our families that we're very, very concerned about, who just a moment ago were had a job, held a job, had a sense of what was going to happen tomorrow, in the next moment, and then suddenly they were forced to live on their own, suddenly terrified. These members of society, these members of our family, the loved ones are part of us. They are us, and so we're asking to restore smart dollars to make the right kinds of choices and to prevent the harm to people that we love and we adore and consider very much a part of us.
Good morning. My name is Tom Worley. I represent the Oregon Center for Christian Values, and I've also spent some time outside with the folks of Right to Survive. So I'm speaking to you from both of those perspectives. One of the first things I would like to communicate is that as an organization, OCCV, Oregon Center for Christian Values, we advocate for the common good. And one of the things I would like to put before you is who is included. How do we draw the circle as who's included in the common good and who's excluded? There's an expression, Imago Dei, in the image of God. We believe everybody carries the image of God, not just those of us that are fortunate enough to live inside, but those who are outside. In my career, I was a counselor, worked with at-risk kids and families in schools and outside, and I know that housing is fundamental to well-being, but not only that, to full participation. And so, as was said earlier, this is not only the right thing, the good thing to do, but it's a smart thing. There's a resource of people that we're losing by not providing housing. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Paul Davis. I am the Minister for Outreach at St. Stephen's Episcopal Parish. I also am the director of our meals program we call Clay Street Table. We'll serve about 60,000 meals of food and groceries to our friends who are living outside or in low-income housing that are around us. And we're celebrating right now the positive effects of this kind of funding. One of our couples that's been living outside for over a year just recently were able to move into their first apartment with some rent assistance and also some help with Rent Well program. And so they now are celebrating being indoors, and the volunteers in our program, folks from various churches, are bringing furniture for them, and we're celebrating with them that they're into their first apartment together, and there's this wonderful community of support now that's coming together to help them. So I think that this funding to help them get into housing has this other ripple effect, that it allows those of us that are having relationships with folks who are coming to our programs to then continue the service and to help them thrive.
Hello, my name is Kate Lohr, and I'm the Social Justice Minister at First Unitarian Church. I'm also a formerly homeless child. Back in the 60s, when we were abandoned by a father, we were the few that actually lost housing in this country. And we were surrounded by love and support by our neighbors, by our family, and it was doable. So I was able to go back into housing and lead a productive life. As I had my own children, there was a shift in society in which more and more families were getting homeless, more families than we could actually accommodate as neighbors and as families. So the faith community came together to provide emergency shelter for homeless families. But the numbers continue to grow. It's now bigger than the faith community can handle. We need support from the government. We need these funds to alleviate the suffering we see growing every day. I work downtown Portland. At 8 o'clock, I watch the families walk into our shelter. What I've seen lately is a shift. It's not strangers anymore. It's members of my very own church. We are in a crisis, and we need every dollar we can spare. We want to make sure every family's indoors for Christmas. Thank you very much.
Reverend Mark Knudsen, Senior Pastor, Augustana Lutheran Church in Portland. Every day, people come seeking assistance and a warm place to be, bus tickets, food, housing, phone calls. You get 5 or 6 in a day easily asking for rent assistance so people are not evicted. We estimate 25,000 people come to our church a year for the nonprofit work we do with the Community Alliance of Tenants and others. Let me just say very clearly, synagogues, mosques, temples, churches are committed that every human being has all that they need for life. We are created in the image of God. But we as a state and as a society owe that to one another. It's that common good we heard spoken of earlier. Headlines this morning in the Oregonian. One was the 50th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's assassination. The other was potential kicker in the state of Oregon. We are in a place and a time where we have to commit ourselves as a state to putting those resources fully, that no one should be houseless and no one should not have all that they need for life. Let me just close with a Kennedy quote. He said, "Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. Let us not seek to fix the blame on the past. Let us accept our own responsibility for the future." And that's why we're standing up here as faith leaders, as a state. We all owe it to one another to respond so no one is suffering and all might have life. Thank you.
Mark, excellent. Dr. Bethel.
My name is Willa Keegan Rodewald. I'm 22 years old, and my whole life I've seen homelessness. It's a fixture in my world, and it makes me wonder, will there always be homeless people? This year I'm working with New City Initiative as part of my time in the Quaker Voluntary Service. I was raised in the Quaker tradition, but this year I'm engaging my faith more deeply as I spend a year serving the community and practicing living my principles. In my work with New City Initiative, I meet people every day who are homeless. We try to support people as they transition out of homelessness by helping them train for jobs, express themselves creatively, find rides to important appointments, and get involved with their communities. While these initiatives make a difference in the lives of the people we work with, the biggest need I've been made aware of is the most basic. There is a profound need for housing. We all need somewhere to rest our heads physically and mentally. We all need somewhere to feel safe. We all need a space to go to that can be a foundation to build our lives upon. There aren't enough of those spaces in Oregon, and restoring these programs will make a difference for thousands of people. In working to end homelessness, I'm proud to be following in the long Quaker tradition of social activism. A common Quaker tenet is to let your life speak what you believe. Lucretia Mott, Jane Addams, and Bayard Rustin, who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom on Wednesday, are just a few of the many who have made their lives speak for others. They've worked through nonviolent means to ensure that every person has equal rights and opportunities. They are living the Quaker belief that there is something of the light or spirit in everyone. Every person needs a stable foundation where they can find and express what that something is to the world. Right now, that means every Oregonian needs a place to call home. One of my favorite bits of Quaker wisdom comes from George Fox. Walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of God in everyone. These letters and these voices today are the call for change, and it's time for the Oregon Legislature to answer.
My name is Kent Harrop. I'm the pastor at First Baptist Church in McMinnville, and I'm also the chair of our community inclement weather emergency shelter, which is open tonight. And I'm speaking on behalf of the rural counties where the recession hasn't ended. In Yamhill County, we are significantly above the statewide unemployment rate. The county food bank has been stretched to the limit year in and year out. The usage is up dramatically. The social safety net is frayed. People who give consistently from the faith community are stretched again and again, and we are calling upon the state and county government to step up and again do their part for our fellow citizens. Tonight, when we gather and open the winter shelter at the church I serve, in partnership with 5 other congregations, we'll be thinking of Russell and Joanne, who both died because of exposure in Yamhill County 3 years ago in their camps. And 3 years ago, the faith community came together and we said, not again, not under our watch. And we have a responsibility to one another. So we provide emergency shelter, but there is a lack of affordable housing. There is a lack of treatment for people who are active in their addiction. There is a lack of treatment for people who are mentally ill. People who are off their medication and can't afford medication or can't get the support they need. So we in the rural communities are stretched and we're exhausted, and we need support from the state and from the county. The faith communities, the service clubs, we will continue to do our part, but we need the state to do their part as well. Thank you.
My name is Evan Whipple. I'm a member of First Covenant Congregation, and when I drove for TriMet, I had a passenger named Steve Jones, whom I think is representative of the homeless. He lived in an area between the Columbia River and the main street in Troutdale, and he came on and said that he was having terrible trouble with his back from sleeping outside all the time in the rugged terrain, but he couldn't afford a chiropractor. He was hoping to save money to get one. And another day he came on, said, somebody robbed me, and most of my stuff is gone. And another day he said, the city of Troutdale is talking about doing a sweep and removing us all from our area that we have to spend the night here in Troutdale. And I'm hoping that if the funding is restored for these two programs, that people like Steve won't have those problems. I asked him, Steve, are you ever going to find a place to live, a home? And he just said, I don't know, I just have to take it one day at a time. And I hope that people like Steve can tell other bus drivers, I did find a place, and I'm not going to be homeless.
Amen.
I'm Reverend Dr. T. Allen Bethel, Senior Pastor, Maranatha Church, President of the Albino Ministerial Alliance. You may ask the question, what does all of these people have in common standing on this podium today? Well, we all have in common the need for housing and care for those who are most vulnerable in our society, those who are houseless. We've come today to say that it is time for us to arise and do the work that is necessary to prevent homelessness and yet to end it. We're calling on our legislatures to once again fund these two particular programs so that there is funding available to help out with the housing deposits, with room assistance, with rental assistance, to help for the necessary services that we are in need of. It is a basic human right to be able to have a place where one can sleep, where one can feel safe and one can be warm. It is a basic human right to call upon our legislators who have been elected to represent us to begin to help us by doing some things that will indeed help these who are vulnerable in our communities. We also come today to say to our legislators, I extend to you my hand, and I'll certainly tell you that all of those behind me will extend to you our hands, and if you put your hand in my hand, together we can prevent and end homelessness. We're looking forward to your hand in helping us to do this. Thank you.
So just to close with one detail I don't think we said, which is that we're calling on the legislature over the biennium to restore $4 million, which basically represents that which was taken out of the EHA, the Emergency Housing Account, and the State Homeless Assistance Program, adjusted for inflation. We believe that those $4 million will allow more than 1,300 homeless families in Oregon to receive support, to receive services, including shelter, eviction prevention, paying for deposits and emergency rent assistance, domestic violence shelter, and other important and necessary services. So we're grateful for the work of the Oregon legislature, and we appreciate their consideration of the request we're bringing today.